The rain had just stopped falling on the Champs-Élysées when Leonardo DiCaprio ducked into the Rolex boutique. His baseball cap was pulled low, water droplets still clinging to his worn leather jacket. He'd been filming on location for 3 days straight, and his beard had grown scruffy, his clothes wrinkled from long hours on set. The boutique gleamed with polished marble and glass cases that caught the afternoon light. Leonardo approached the nearest display, studying a vintage submariner that reminded him of one his father had worn years ago. "Excusez-moi," a clipped voice interrupted his thoughts. The sales consultant, Pierre, stood ramrod straight in his immaculate suit, eyeing Leonardo's appearance with barely concealed disdain. "This is a private viewing. We don't serve walk-in tourists here." Leonardo looked up, surprised. "I'm actually interested in—" "As I said," Pierre cut him off, "we have very selective clientele. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the department stores down the street. They sell replicas." The insult hung in the air. Leonardo could have revealed his identity, could have made a scene. Instead, he simply nodded. "I understand. Thank you for your time." He walked out into the Paris afternoon, where the wet pavement reflected the city lights like scattered diamonds. 2 hours later, a black Range Rover pulled up outside the boutique. Leonardo stepped out, this time accompanied by 2 security guards and François Beaumont, Rolex's regional brand manager for Western Europe. "Leo, I cannot apologize enough," François was saying as they entered. "When I heard what happened..." Pierre's face went white as he recognized the group. His hands trembled slightly as he set down the watch he'd been polishing. "Monsieur DiCaprio," Pierre stammered. I didn't recognize." François' voice was ice. "Pierre, collect your things. Your employment here is terminated, effective immediately." "Wait," Leonardo said quietly. Every eye in the boutique turned to him. "That's not why I came back." He walked to a different display case, gesturing to a young sales associate named Marie who had been watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. "Could you help me, please? I'm looking for something special." Marie approached nervously. "Of course, Monsieur DiCaprio. What did you have in mind?" "First," Leonardo said, pulling out his wallet, "I want to leave you a tip." He handed her an envelope that would later reveal 5,000 euros. "For your excellent service." Marie's eyes widened. "But I haven't." "You're about to," Leonardo smiled. "I need 11 watches. The one I was looking at earlier, and 10 others. But here's the thing, 10 of them aren't for me." He turned to François. "I want them sent anonymously to the Wounded Warriors Foundation in Los Angeles. Make sure they go to veterans who've served multiple tours. No publicity, no press releases. Just a thank you for their service." Pierre stood frozen by the door, his termination papers in hand. "And François?" Leonardo added. "Let Pierre stay. Everyone deserves a second chance to recognize the value in people, regardless of how they're dressed." The boutique fell silent. Pierre set down his belongings, his eyes glistening. "Besides," Leonardo continued, examining the submariner through the glass, "he did me a favor. If he'd recognized me immediately, I'd have bought 1 watch and left. Now 10 veterans will have something special to mark their service." Later that evening, Margot Robbie found Leonardo at their hotel bar, nursing a whiskey. She'd heard about the incident through the Hollywood grapevine. News traveled fast, even across the Atlantic. "So I heard you went shopping today," she said, sliding onto the barstool beside him. Leonardo chuckled. "Word travels fast. 10 Rolexes for veterans? That's very you." She signaled the bartender for a martini. "Though I'm surprised you didn't let them fire the guy. What would that have accomplished?" Leonardo swirled his drink thoughtfully. "He'll remember this more than any termination. Maybe next time he'll look past the clothes." Margot studied her friend. They'd known each other since The Wolf of Wall Street, and she'd seen him handle fame with a grace that still surprised her. "You know what I love about you, Leo? You could have made this a whole PR thing." Leonardo DiCaprio discriminated against at luxury store. The headlines would have written themselves. "That's exactly why I didn't," he replied. The veteran's gifts stay anonymous. Pierre keeps his job. The only person who knows the whole story is Marie, and she deserved that tip for being the only one who didn't judge. "And now me," Margot pointed out. "And now you." He clinked his glass against hers. "But you won't tell anyone." "Of course not." She paused. "Though it would make a great scene in a movie." Leonardo laughed. "Everything's material with you writers." "Actor/producer," she corrected. "And yes, everything is material. But some stories are better left untold. They mean more that way." The next morning, Pierre arrived at the boutique early. On his desk was a single rose and a note, "Thank you for the lesson in humility. L." He kept that note in his wallet for the rest of his career, a reminder that true luxury isn't about what someone wears, but how they treat others when no one's watching. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, 10 veterans would soon receive unexpected packages. Each watch came with a simple card, "For your service and sacrifice." From a grateful citizen. No names. No publicity. Just gratitude, delivered quietly in the way that mattered most. Years later, at a charity auction in New York, one of those veterans would meet Leonardo by chance. He'd wore his Rolex proudly, never knowing who his benefactor was until that moment when Leonardo noticed the watch and asked about it. "Someone sent this to me after my 3rd tour in Afghanistan," the veteran explained. "Never found out who. Changed my life though, reminded me that people cared, even when it felt like the world had forgotten us." Leonardo smiled and shook the man's hand. "Sounds like they had good taste." The veteran laughed. "The best. Though I always wondered why they chose Rolex. Seems like something you'd need to try on first, you know? Make sure it fits." "Maybe they knew," Leonardo said quietly, "that sometimes the best gifts come from understanding that everyone deserves recognition, regardless of their appearance." The veteran studied him for a moment, something clicking in his mind. But Leonardo had already moved on to greet other guests, leaving the mystery intact. That night, Margot called him from London where she was filming. "I met someone today," she said. "A veteran at a charity event. He had the most interesting Rolex. Said it was a gift from an anonymous donor years ago." "Small world," Leonardo replied. "Getting smaller every day." She paused. "You never did tell me how you chose which watches to send." "I asked Marie to help. Told her to pick timepieces that would last a lifetime. Watches that would remind someone they mattered, every time they checked the time." "And the one you kept?" Leonardo glanced at his wrist, where the submariner caught the light from his hotel window. "This one? It reminds me of my father. He had one just like it when I was a kid. Used to let me wear it when I visited him on set." Full circle, then. Everything always is, eventually. Margot smiled on the other end of the line. "You know, that sales guy Pierre is now the boutique manager. I heard he implemented a new policy, they treat everyone who walks in like they could be anyone. No judgments, no assumptions. Good for him. He also started a program where they donate watches to first responders. Completely changed the culture of that store." Leonardo smiled. Sometimes the best changes come from the worst moments. Very philosophical for a man who got kicked out of a jewelry store for looking homeless. "Watch store," he corrected. "And I prefer, casually dressed." They laughed, and the conversation drifted to other things, upcoming projects, mutual friends, the perpetual chaos of Hollywood. But the story of the Paris boutique lived on in quiet ways, in Pierre's transformed approach to customer service, in Marie's confidence that soared after that day, in 10 veterans who wore their gifts with pride, never knowing their benefactor. And in Leonardo's Submariner, which he wore not as a status symbol, but as a reminder that true character reveals itself not in moments of recognition, but in how we handle being unseen, unrecognized, and underestimated. The watch face caught the light as he ended the call, its hands moving steadily forward, marking time in the same way for everyone, celebrity or stranger, veteran or civilian, recognized or dismissed. Time, the great equalizer, ticking away moments that mattered only in how they were used. Later that week, François Beaumont would report to the Rolex board about the incident. It could have been a PR disaster, he explained. Instead, it became a lesson in corporate values. Sales at that location have increased 30%, but more importantly, customer satisfaction scores are the highest in Europe. How do you measure something like that? A board member asked. You don't, François replied. You just know it when you see it. Like recognizing value in unexpected places. The story never made headlines. No social media posts went viral. Just a quiet ripple of change that started in a moment of misunderstanding and grew into something larger, proof that sometimes the most powerful statements are the ones we don't make, and the greatest gifts are the ones given without seeking recognition. And somewhere in Los Angeles, Paris, London, and New York, watches ticked on, marking time and measuring moments, each second a reminder that true luxury isn't what we wear or own, but how we see and treat one another in the brief time we share. As Leonardo had learned long ago, and as Pierre discovered that rainy afternoon in Paris, the most valuable things in life aren't always the most obvious. Sometimes they come disguised in worn leather jackets and rain-dampened baseball caps, waiting to teach us lessons we didn't know we needed to learn. The Submariner on his wrist caught the morning light as Leonardo prepared for another day on set. Somewhere across the world, 10 other watches were doing the same thing, marking time, measuring moments, and reminding their wearers that someone, somewhere, had seen their value when the rest of the world might have looked away. And in a boutique on the Champs-Élysées, Pierre greeted each customer with the same warmth and respect, no longer seeing clothes or appearances, but possibilities and people. The rose Leonardo had left him was long gone, but the lesson remained, pressed between the pages of his memory like a flower in a book, beautiful, enduring, and transformative. The rain began to fall again on the Paris streets, washing the city clean and making everything shine with possibility. In the Rolex boutique, Marie was training a new associate, passing on not just product knowledge but something more valuable, the understanding that every person who walks through their doors carries a story worth honoring, regardless of how that story is dressed. And so the ripples continued, spreading outward from one moment of grace, one choice to forgive rather than punish, one decision to give anonymously rather than seek acclaim. In the end, that's what remained, not the slight of being turned away, but the dignity of returning with kindness, not the watches themselves, but what they represented, not the recognition, but the quiet satisfaction of doing good without expecting anything in return. Time moved forward, as it always does, marked by the steady tick of watch hands circling endless faces. But in those circles, stories lived on, of recognition and misrecognition, of second chances and quiet charity, of friendship that transcended fame and values that outweighed vengeance. The watch that wasn't for sale had become something more, a reminder that the most precious moments are often the ones we choose not to capitalize on, and the greatest luxury of all is the ability to transform judgment into generosity, slight into kindness, and a moment of rejection into an opportunity for grace. As the Paris rain continued to fall, cleansing and renewing the ancient streets, Leonardo DiCaprio's Submariner kept perfect time, its hands moving steadily forward into whatever stories the future would bring. But the past remained, crystallized in memory and action, a testament to the power of choosing kindness over conquest, especially when no one's watching, and the only witness is time itself. And in that choice, small, personal, and profound, lay the true measure of a man, ticking away with quiet certainty, as enduring and precise as any luxury timepiece ever made. 5 years later, Pierre had become one of Rolex's most respected boutique directors in Europe. He'd instituted what became known as the DiCaprio Protocol, though no one outside the company knew why it was called that. Every employee was trained to treat each customer as if they might be someone extraordinary in disguise, because, as Pierre would say, everyone is extraordinary in their own way. Marie had been promoted to senior sales consultant and had trained dozens of new associates. She never told the story of that rainy afternoon, but she lived its lesson every day. The envelope Leonardo had given her hadn't just contained money, it had contained a note: value isn't always visible. Thank you for seeing it anyway. One particular morning, a young man entered the boutique. His clothes were paint-splattered, his hands rough from manual labor. The other customers, wealthy tourists and local elite, gave him a wide berth. But Pierre approached him personally. "How may I help you today, sir?" The young man seemed nervous. I saved for 3 years. I want to buy a watch for my father. He's retiring from the factory where he worked for 40 years. Pierre spent 2 hours with him, showing him various options, sharing stories about each timepiece. When the young man finally selected a modest Oyster Perpetual, Pierre had it specially engraved, "For Dad, time well spent." As the young man left, clutching his purchase, Marie approached Pierre. "Remember when you wouldn't have done that?" Pierre touched the wallet where he still kept Leonardo's note. "Every day I'm grateful I learned better." Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, one of the veterans who had received an anonymous Rolex had started a support group for returning soldiers. He wore his watch to every meeting, and when new members admired it, he'd tell them the story: "Someone I never met thought I was worth this. Made me believe it too." That veteran, Marcus Thompson, had no idea his benefactor was Leonardo DiCaprio. But he'd paid the kindness forward, helping dozens of struggling veterans find their way back to civilian life. The watch had become a symbol, not of luxury, but of unseen support, of strangers caring for strangers. One evening in Malibu, Leonardo was having dinner with friends when Margot Robbie arrived with an unexpected guest. "Leo, this is Marcus Thompson," she said. "He runs a veteran support organization. We're considering him for a consultant role on my new film." Leonardo shook hands with Marcus, noticing immediately the familiar Rolex on his wrist. The exact model he'd asked Marie to select 5 years ago. "Beautiful watch," Leonardo commented casually. Marcus smiled. "Gift from a guardian angel. Never found out who, but it changed my life. Reminded me I mattered when I'd forgotten." They talked for hours. Marcus shared stories of the veterans he'd helped, the programs he'd started, the lives transformed. Leonardo listened, asking thoughtful questions, never revealing his connection to the watch that had started it all. Later, as Marcus was leaving, he turned back. "You know, Mr. DiCaprio, that watch, it wasn't just the gift itself. It was the message it sent. That someone saw value in us when we couldn't see it in ourselves." "Sounds like they chose the right person," Leonardo replied. After Marcus left, Margot studied her friend. "You're not going to tell him, are you? What would be the point?" Leonardo asked. "Look what he's built from that moment. The story isn't about who gave the watch, it's about what he did with the gift." Margot smiled. "Pierre from the boutique called me last week. Did you know they now have a program where they hire veterans as security consultants? Started after Marcus visited the store wearing his watch and shared his story. Full circle. Getting wider every year." Back in Paris, the boutique had become something of a legend in luxury retail. Other stores sent their staff to train there, to learn what business journals called the Rolex Renaissance, though they never quite captured what had sparked the transformation. Pierre, now gray-haired but still impeccably dressed, would sometimes stand by the window where Leonardo had first approached that rainy day. He'd think about how a moment of blindness had led to years of clearer sight, how a near firing had become the foundation of a better career, how judgment had transformed into understanding. Every Christmas, the boutique received an anonymous donation to be distributed to charity. The card always read, "For those who see value everywhere." Pierre knew who sent it, though they'd never discussed it in the few times Leonardo had returned to shop there over the years. One particularly busy December afternoon, a woman entered the boutique. She was elderly, her clothes simple but neat, clutching a worn handbag. The holiday shoppers barely noticed her. But Marie did. She approached with the same warmth she showed every customer. "How may I help you today, madam?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My grandson saved his money to buy me something special for Christmas. He's only 12, and he's been saving for 2 years. He insisted I come here, said I deserve the best." She opened her purse to show a small envelope of carefully saved euros. "I know it's not enough for anything here, but I couldn't disappoint him." Marie knelt beside her, taking her hands gently. "Let me show you something special." She led the woman to a display of vintage pieces, including a beautiful lady's watch from the 1960s, technically not for sale, part of their heritage collection. "This watch," Marie explained, "has been waiting for the right person. Sometimes value isn't about price, it's about story." Pierre, watching from his office, came down. Together, they spent an hour with the woman, learning about her grandson, her life, her dreams deferred but not forgotten. When she left, she wore the vintage timepiece, tears of joy streaming down her face. The official receipt would show a sale price that matched exactly what her grandson had saved. The actual value, priceless in more ways than one, would remain between Marie, Pierre, and the boutique's quiet tradition of recognizing worth beyond wealth. That evening, Pierre received a call from François Beaumont, now CEO of Rolex Europe. "I heard about today. The board wants to know why we sold a heritage piece below market value." "Because," Pierre replied, thinking of a rainy afternoon 5 years ago, "sometimes the greatest luxury is the ability to see past the surface. We didn't sell a watch today. We honored a grandmother's worth and a grandson's love. That's the business we're really in." François was quiet for a moment. "You learned that from him, didn't you? From that day with DiCaprio?" "We all did. Every lesson has the power to transform not just one person, but everyone they touch. Today, that grandmother will tell her grandson his gift was perfect. He'll grow up knowing his love has value. Who knows what he'll become, knowing that?" As night fell over Paris, the boutique lights cast warm glows on the rain-wet streets. In Los Angeles, Leonardo was preparing for a charity gala, wearing his Submariner, the watch that had started it all. In New York, Marcus Thompson was leading another veterans meeting, his Rolex catching the light as he gestured, sharing hope with those who needed it most. Marie was training a new generation of sales associates, teaching them that luxury wasn't about exclusion but about recognition. Pierre was drafting a proposal for a new Rolex initiative, a program that would identify and support young artisans and craftspeople, regardless of their backgrounds. The ripples continued, spreading outward from that single moment when a famous actor chose kindness over revenge, when a misguided salesman learned to see beyond appearances, when 10 veterans received anonymous gifts that reminded them of their worth. Time moved forward, measured by countless watches on countless wrists, each tick a reminder that moments matter, choices echo, and kindness, especially unexpected kindness, has the power to transform not just days or years, but entire lives. And somewhere in the space between seconds, in the pause between heartbeats, in the silence between the tick and the talk, lived the truth that Leonardo had always known and Pierre had learned that day, that real luxury isn't what we wear or own, but how we choose to see and treat one another in the brief, precious time we share. The watches would continue their patient circling, marking hours and days and years. But the story they told had already transcended time itself, becoming something eternal, a reminder that in every moment of judgment lies an opportunity for grace, and in every closed door, the possibility of opening hearts instead. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy this video and learned a lesson. I would be grateful for your likes. Also don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.